Well, I don't know how it happened, but we are at the end of another year. And for Magic the Gathering, there have been a lot of cards that came out this year, a lot of reprints, a lot of IP crossovers. And in this video, we're going to be talking about our favorite cards from 2023 for Commander.
23 cards, 23 years in 2000. I don't know. Let's get into it.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat. Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your 2023 with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel and Magic. Starting this list off with Roaming Throne seems appropriate. This card popped onto the scene in the last set of the year and has absolutely taken over the conversation. Look, at ETBs, you choose a creature type. We're going to go with the floor of this card, okay? You built it completely wrong, and it's not even in a deck that is predominantly one creature type. You play it, you name your commander's creature type. Oh, your commander has an ETB? Nice. You get that ETB twice. Done. 4 mana. Worth it.
I mean, that triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers that triggers an additional time. There are a lot of triggered abilities in Magic the Gathering. So in addition to this just being a 4/4 with Ward 2 for 4, you get a lot of upside. Yeah. Very fun card, and a lot of people have been saying it's extremely strong. And what is the other thing that we like to say about these cards, Joel? They're strong, they're fun,
and they are good. We are next.
And they are good.
Talking about a good one, yo, I put this one on the list. We have some cards, obviously, that are powerhouses, but we also have some cards on here that were just personal cards to us in 2023. And for me, this card has been the bomb. Again, from the most recent set, last set to come out of the year, so I've got a little recency bias on it, but I would definitely be talking about this even if this had come out in January. This has been my historic Brawl deck since it came out. Yo, you just get some creatures on the battlefield 1 and 2, turns 1 and 2, make sure they're not gnomes, drop Animpackle on turn 2, turn 3, and start swinging. The counter goes on to Anim if anything is attacking that's not a gnome, not just Anim, and those gnome artifact creature tokens are getting created again, whether or not Animpackle is actually attacking. And so it turns into this really crazy Krinko type commander, but it just gets out of hand so fast because there are so many residual effects of like, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and it gets some other stuff as well. And that just grows the entire thing. So I wanted to talk about my newest favorite historic Brawl commander. I know it's not straight up commander, but maybe I'll build this as a 100 card deck one day. We'll see.
It seems kind of cool, and I like that its casting cost is 3. It seems like you just want to go wide with this and just run a bunch of, like Hasty Boys, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of creatures in this deck that are like, at the beginning of combat, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. Then you move to the attack and you get even more counters, and it just goes absolutely nuts out of the gate. Yeah, but Tempered Steel, you're right. Go wide, drop a bunch of artifact creatures, and play Tempered Steel. Rock and roll.
Seems pretty fun. Next up, we have Kite Sail Larcenist. This was actually a card that Joel played in a D&D campaign. But this is a creature, human pirate, flying ward 1. You get a 2/3. Whenever ETBs for each player, choose up to 1 other target artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as Kite Sail Larcenist remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents become treasure artifacts with tap. Sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, you know what treasure does, and loses all other abilities. So this kind of, in a way, feels like a Grasp of Fate to me, in a way, like you're kind of going to use it like that. But the fact that it's for each of your opponents it's pretty strong.
That's the part that I like. It also sort of teases them and says, look, it's a treasure. I've ramped you. Go ahead and sacrifice that thing that I don't want you to have on the battlefield anymore. I'm totally fine if you use your 1 ring to create 1 single mana of any color. Yeah, I put this one on here because every single time, Jake, I see it, I go, hey, that's that character I played in D&D. But it's also a very strong fun and good card that I will always remember from 2023. Much like Delighted Halfling. Holy crap, I can't escape this card. Talking about playing Historic Brawl, this is everyone's favorite one drop if you're in green. And I mean, it's for good reason. That second ability, add a mana of any color. If it's on, it can only be cast, used to cast a legendary spell, and that spell can't be countered. 1 mana dork that says your commander can't be countered. Yeah, sounds good.
And it's a 1/2. Like, right. Why?
Yeah, it's got a 2-but.
It could be a freaking 0/1 and people would still play it.
100%.
It doesn't make any freaking sense. And it's got the ability to, it taps for wastes if you don't need the can't be countered. It's just absolutely bananas, and there's so much power creep going on, and it kind of reminds me and does what why you play Allosaurus Shepherd. Like, sure, you can pump a bunch of mana into it, but really just like the can't be countered, right?
Yeah, it is crazy that this has a get out of jail free clause on it, where if you're trying to cast a non-legendary spell, they're like, sure, come on, we're
just
good.
Do it.
Doesn't matter. There is no downside to this card at all. Yeah, it's really strong, just like Elven Chorus is. Right, Elven Chorus, 1 green and 3 other for an enchantment, and it's got all the fixins. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, or Oracle of Moldiah action. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Okay, and then creatures you control have this other thing that's just amazing. Add 1 mana of any color. This card, Joel, is strong. It is fun, and boy, is it good. Look, Elven Chorus is the Coracle of Moldiah. It is Oracle of Moldiah, but for your creatures, and as a kicker, it turns them all into Birds of Paradise. Why not? This is go wide decks are gonna love this. Token decks, which are everywhere, are gonna love this. Last March of the Ents, got another LOTR green card in here. 2 green, 6 other, can't be countered sorcery, and says draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control, then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. This is the kind of card where it's just like, I'm down to this 1 creature and I'm in top deck mode, but luckily I just top decked Last March of the Ents. I'm refilling my hand, and I'm dumping a bunch of creatures on the battlefield. I'm hoping I have 2 mana left over for heroic intervention, and I'm passing. When you're casting a big splashy 8-cost green sorcery, thank God it says can't be countered on it. I'm not even touching it if it doesn't say that. I mean, this is a very, very powerful card. And yeah, it gets you right back in the game, dude. It's in the right colors. If I'm not in green, and it's going to be really hard for me to rationalize playing something 8 cost. It's going to have to be in a deck that's just packed full of mana rocks. So this, for me, it's crazy how many good things came out of Lord of the Rings. No, it's not. They wanted to sell that set. I think I think that this card, if it said split second, number 1 would be complete flavor loss and would not make any sense at all because it's a bunch of slow trees walking. Number 2, it would get you out of the only way to absolutely get hosed with this card, which is instant speed removal on the creature that's going to make this worth it, leaving your no creatures on the battlefield or like a 1 toughness creature on the battlefield, and you're drawing a card and you maybe don't even get to dump that creature if it's just some land you draw. So Last March of the Ents, yeah, big, splashy. It does what you want it to do, but nothing does what the One Ring does, that's for sure. This card is a format warper, dude. It's been compared to Teferi's Protection. It does a lot of stuff. It makes sense. The One Ring is an extremely, extremely powerful artifact from the Lord of the Rings, world. The fact that it's over the top, I guess I can get behind that, but it is absurd how good this card is. It's very, very good. On Arena, they have edited this card for that activation at the bottom. Tap, put a burden counter on it, then draw a card for each burden counter on it. They've made that a 1-cost activation so that you can't do it if you are fully tapped out. But pro everything until your next turn. And then most of the decks that are running this are offsetting at the beginning of your upkeep. You lose a life for each burden counter on it. They're offsetting that so easily with things like Newest Shieldred. Any amount of life gain commanders don't care. There are so many blink commanders that can reset this. Obviously, you don't get the pro everything again, but you can just reset the counters on it pretty easily. Yeah, it does everything. It's as iconic as it needed to be. It has popped up everywhere. I'm glad that a card that is this iconic, to say it again, to this IP has gotten so much attention as part of this release, not only as a playable card, but the one of one thing that has to be mentioned to, you know, as sort of a defining moment of 2023. I think that this card does exactly everything it needs to do, and it's wonderful. I think this is a net positive for the game. I know a lot of people disagree with me.
One thing I think is wild about it is it doesn't have any of that "the ring tempts you" on it.
Well,
which is
there's
like
a lot to be said for all of that. Like the downside of being the ring bearer have not really existing and all of that. So overall, though, this card, good, strong fun for damn sure. And I'm happy. I'm happy.
And fun.
I'm happy that we got it. Jake, tell us about Nissa as a legendary creature. No planeswalker anymore.
So this is the card that came out of March of the Machine Aftermath. That's the card.
This is the card. You're looking at it.
There's some other cards. 1 green, 2 other. For a little elf scout, 3/3 action, landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. Then if this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an elf or elemental card. Put that card put that card into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is a card for elf elemental shenanigans. If you are in one of those two things, you should be playing this. It's a fantastic engine for either of those decks. And this is a very powerful card that did come out of March of the Machine Aftermath. I know that was a set this year that a lot of people memed on, but this is a good card. So expect, as more elf synergy, as more elemental synergy comes out, this is going to be one of those cards that people are going to want to explore. We already know that landfall is really good, so keep that in the back of your mind as well.
This is a cool legend, Lotus Cobra with card advantage tacked on for an extra mana. I dig it. It's a sweet little mythic, and I'm glad that set gave us something. Jake, this is my card of the year. Breach the Multiverse.
Ooh, okay.
Got some very suggestive art here, but I have cast this card more this year than any individual 2023 card. It has just been fantastic. I love cards like this. It's not fully, like Rise of the Dark Realms, but you can get so much heat, and it's just such a fun cast. I love effects like this where, okay, let's just go one at a time. Everybody mill 10. Let me see what my choices are. Be like, oh yeah, well, I mean, obviously you want this one here. The rest of it's crap, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whenever there's situations like that at a table where it's like, all right, everybody, show me your graveyard. Just go ahead and tell me, what is your best creature? What creature am I most likely to want to take? Because, it saves time. It'll just be like, look, you want this one. You could also have this one, but it's up to you. I love when it gets to that point in a game, and Breach the Multiverse brings us to that point in a game so quickly for 7 mana, baby.
There's a lot of these effects that are like the sepulchral primordial kind of thing, where like you grab something from everyone's graveyard. It's like Grave Betrayal, except you get it like now,
exactly.
Which is, I think, why this is very good. Yeah, man, I'm a fan of it. And it doesn't even need to be something that's milled in those 10. It could be something that was already in the graveyard sitting there.
It's beautiful. It's better than Garuda. Garuda's ability is limited like that, where it can only be from the cards that get hit. But Breach the Multiverse gives you 10 more options per graveyard, and that potential options per graveyard, and then is like, but then just pick whatever you want from the graveyards, and they come right onto the battlefield.
I can't believe that card doesn't get exiled after it's used.
Nope, we can flash it back,
just
baby.
Snap it back, right?
Yep.
Mondrak came out this year, and Mondrak is a card that doubles tokens. Woohoo! We know that it's good. 2 white, 2 other for 4/4. Legendary creature, Phyrexian Horror. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead.
Done.
And then you could sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures, put an indestructible counter on Mondrak, make sure that it doesn't go away. So you can kind of plan around that effect. But yeah, it's got like that doubling season, anointed procession kind of vibe going on, which when you run one, you typically run all of them just so that you can get all of the degenerate effects at once.
Yeah, redundancy on effects like this, and then an instant speed. Whoopsie, it's indestructible. I dig it. I don't dig how many mouths and teeth it has, but I do dig it. Much like Skrove, I've used this card a lot too. This was a unified pick for me and Jake as far as cards of the year go. Jake, this went right into Dihada. It's a legendary. It's a 1-drop. I can recur it. It's in the Mardu colors, and it gives one of my creatures hexproof for me just paying 2 life. I don't even need mana open. I can just pay 2 life and tap this sucker, and one of my creatures is gaining hexproof and also toxic if I just want to toss that in. But it's pesky. It gets you around targeted removal because they've got to target Skrove first. Skrove is a standard bearer, and at legendary, at 1 mana, at Phyrexian mana to activate it. There's so many reasons to run this card in so many decks.
And in the command zone, it's a Mother of Ruins in the command zone.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
you want to play it as your commander, just make your commander be your flag bearer or your standard bearer. You know, this is the first time we get to play Mother of Ruins as a commander. So very fun card here, extremely strong.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing that we like to say?
Definitely good.
So is Skrelv like a tooth that fell out of Mondrak's mouth and now it has defected and it's biting Ellis Norn's hand?
It's like a tooth that needed a root canal. It was the most painful tooth because, you know, it's a legendary tooth here, but between the top mouth that is chewing on a metal finger and the bottom mouth that's like, hey, I want to bite, you've got a pretty screepy little scroopy here, man.
How much would you like that card if it was a Phyrexian tooth instead of a Phyrexian might?
I think that should have been the whole set. It was already the aesthetic, right?
Just introduce the creature type tooth. Next up, we have Displaced Dinosaurs. Joel, do you want to tell us about this one?
Sure. 7 mana for a 7/7 dino. It says as a historic permanent. So any artifact, any legendary, and any saga enters the battlefield under your control, it becomes a 7/7 dinosaur in addition to its other types. Y'all know what are artifacts? Food. You know what are artifacts? Clues. You know what are artifacts? Treasures. What if they were all 7/7 dinosaurs? Done.
Yeah,
that's my sales for this call.
Pair that with any sort of hasty effects. You know, this to me screams red green.
Oh yeah.
You got to have red green to get the most out of this because it says as it enters the battlefield under your control, it becomes a 7/7 dinosaur in addition to its other types. That's great if you can make it to that next upkeep and you're able to use it, because it's pretty wild that it just does this passively and it's going to stay like that. It's not an EOT kind of thing. This is something that it's going to just stay a 7/7. So yes, if this big displaced dinosaur sits on your battlefield like a giant enchantment, it's going to turn all of your artifacts into 7/7s. But for me, I really want this in something that is like a Fires of Yavimaya or some sort of way to give stuff haste. Like we said, Fervor, and then there's like Concordant Crossroads. There's many different ways that you could give stuff haste, and I think that's where this is really going to shine, is like, well, food entered, Academy Manufacturers on the battlefield, get 3 7/7s, I'm swinging with 21 power, let's go. Which is why this card is stupidly priced.
Displaced Dinosaurs on the battlefield, Concordant Crossroads on the battlefield, Dockside Extortionist. Okay, I'll go ahead and create 15. How many artifacts do you have over there, Jake? Yep, I'll create 15 7/7s. Yeah, absolutely bonkers.
And then you make sure that you have like Perforos out there so that all of the never mind, we don't need to talk. There's just so many degenerate lines that we could go down talking about the dinosaur card. And then we have Everybody Lives. 1 white, 1 other for instant speed. All creatures gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Players gain hexproof until end of turn. Players can't lose life this turn, and players can't lose the game or win the game this turn. So it literally is what it says. Everybody lives, and we move on to the next turn.
Yeah, it's insane. This is definitely, I'm going for the win. I'm taking the shot. They've got mana open for Teferi's protection. Oh, whoops. They had Everybody Lives, though. Well, whatever. All right. That was I sacrificed everything I had to do 100 damage to you, and now it doesn't matter. Pass. Everybody lived, I guess. This has got to be one of the most, like, when it appears in a game, somebody is super excited and somebody is super pissed, and there's not a lot in between for this card. Got to be polarizing.
Well, this card gives you kind of like free reign to do whatever you want if you have it in your hand. You can be, as long as you have mana untapped for this. No, it could get countered. But as long as you have mana untapped for it, you could swing out with your whole team. You could talk really dirty politics to everybody. You could be,
I love talking dirty politics.
You could be terrible at the table. You know, you could make a big old target out of yourself. You can do whatever you want as long as you have everybody lives in your hand. Because if people do start coming at you, just pay one white, one other, and then
you've got the golden power of veto, baby. This is how this is how you get off the block right here. You just win the POV comp, and you're good to go. And you get to make the calls.
Before we get into our next picks, we want to take a moment to mention our amazing channel sponsors. Card Conduit is a great spot to sell your Magic the Gathering singles if you're looking to make a little bit of extra money, if you're looking to save some time and just buy list some stuff. Make sure to check out Card Conduit. They're a very good resource as a Magic the Gathering player.
TCG Players, the official store of Jake and Joel or Magic. Use the website, use our link. It helps us at no extra cost to you while you're shopping for TCG cards or accessories on the internet. Big shout out to Dragon Shield, best way to protect your cards, and Moxfield, best way to put your deck lists on the internet and share them with us. Let's get back to the video. Vashta Nerada is a call I made for this list. A black and 2 for a 1/1 with Indestructible. It's got Shadow, meaning it can block or be blocked only by creatures with Shadow. And at the beginning of each end step, every person's turn, if a creature died this turn, which happens, put a +1/+1 counter on Vashta Nerada. This is a card that I have not yet played with in 2023, but is at the top of my list, earmarked with a bunch of other cards I haven't gotten to yet. I've got to get this into a deck. I can't wait to play with this card. It's just so intriguing looking to me.
Yeah, it's got kind of like that Tauren, what is it?
Taurian Mauler, yeah.
Taurian Mauler kind of vibe going on, but it's indestructible. And it's a little bit limited because it is at the beginning of each end step. If a creature died this turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. You're not getting that for each creature that died, so it can't get degenerate. Like, it can't really just like snowball out of control.
Sure.
But it does build and build and build.
Well, and
it's
you play this
unblockable. It is indestructible.
Ozolith.
Yeah.
Suddenly we've got, you know, this ETBs and we're dumping counters on it.
100%. 100%. There's definitely ways to accelerate those counters.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, it will get into range where this will eat a path, or this will eat Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have to exile it.
I'll take my land, I'll take my life, and I will move on. You know what I'm saying? Jake, I gotta cover this one. This was in my favorite pre-con of the year. You'll notice I haven't really covered commanders in any of my picks. I don't think, Jake, you did either. We mostly picked 99s. I want to have a whole separate video just for commanders this year, but I played Elevere the Wild Court a lot from like September on, October on, and Unfinished Business was a sorcery and it new from this year. 5 mana sorcery, white 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, then return up to 2 aura and or equipment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. Y'all, these kind of decks are so hard to push through, so hard to get on top of because of the value that green-white enchantments cards can just naturally present by existing these days. And I'll tell you, the heartbreak that can ensue when you return your best creature to get suited up and you automatically suit it up with the 2 best things from your graveyard that they've already dealt with and thought they weren't going to have to deal with because you're in white green. Surely you're not running recursion. Unfinished Business, baby. I had this one make some eyes roll this year. I'll put it that way. I've loved this card.
Yeah, especially when you're grabbing something like a totem armor back when those are already so annoying to work through. So it's like, yeah, we already talk about how the going rate for getting a creature back from the graveyard to the battlefield is like 5.
5, yeah.
And so this is getting not only the creature back from the graveyard to the battlefield, but then you're getting whatever your peskiest auras are. Yeah. And I know you're joking when you're saying, in green white there's no recursion or whatever. Sure. well, obviously there's tons. You know, you got the Eternal Witness, all the green cards like Reclaim that get stuff back, Noxious Revival, that kind of thing. But yeah, this just works perfectly in that kind of shell. I would definitely go with, you know, like a Mammoth Umbra or some sort of big Umbra, something with Totem Armor. If you are returning something to the graveyard to the battlefield, just double dip, put something on it that's going to protect it as well. So yeah, very powerful card for 5 mana. You're already getting a lot more than you're paying for.
Right, yeah, especially equipment with giant equip costs like Colossus Hammer. Just being able to put that straight onto them, bing, bang, boom.
Yeah, next up we have Virtue of Persistence. So it's funny because the half of this card that says at the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. We've had that effect before. We've already talked about Grave Betrayal, that kind of thing. Like when something dies, you get it back under your control.
And that's the same rate too, I'm pretty sure. 5, 6, 7 for the cost.
It is the same rate. But I think what really puts this over the edge is you have a removal built into it. So you're able to, for 1 black and 1 other, cast Locthwain's Scorn, and for sorcery speed you can give target creature -3/-3 until end of turn. You gain 2 life. We already know that minus is going to be really good for getting around stuff like Indestructible, like Vashta and Errata that we've already talked about, anything like that. Then you do get a big splashy enchantment that comes along as well. Now the virtue cycle came out of this set, and there's a card for each color that's one of the virtues, and the black virtue and the white virtue are on this list. What do you think of this one?
Virtue cycle I loved. I think there's an argument somewhere for all of them. I love when a cycle like this doesn't have a super unplayable version or versions. Yeah, Virtue of Persistence. It's funny with Virtue of Persistence, I like the first mode the most, and then the second mode is just like, yeah, eventually I'll be to that, and I'll have this awesome thing to also cast that is not going to be in my hand or graveyard. It's just going to be floating until I want to use it. I love that. It's so funny with the other one, which we'll get to. I kind of like it in the opposite direction. But Jake, Monstrous Rage, we got monster roll token. We got roll tokens in Wilds of Eldraine, and I wanted to throw this uncommon on here because I've seen people use it and go, oh wait, this is really ridiculously strong for 1 red mana at instant speed. But I feel like enough people haven't come around on it yet. +2/+0 until end of turn. Who cares? Create a monster roll token attached to it. Y'all, for 1 red, you can give a creature +3/+1 and trample, and then it keeps +1/+1 and trample permanently. You know how many creatures, how many commanders you're like, man, if this just had trample. Here it is. 1 red mana. Monster roll tokens. You need to be looking at some of these specific cards that create roll tokens. You might want to go look at the mythics and the rares before we move too far out of Wilds of Eldraine. Don't worry, you got like 6 to 8 months before that set makes any kind of thought of a recovery. But these roll tokens, yo, they are much more splashy than people give them credit for. And Monstrous Rage is one of my favorite cards from the year.
Yeah, interesting little card. It's a combat trick that sticks around is kind of how I feel about it. Yeah.
And trample and vigilance and menace in Commander. Oh baby.
Now in Commander, I love a card that replaces itself, and this card does just that. So for 1 green and 1 other, you're playing an enchantment that is going to draw you a card at the baseline. But when Up the Beanstalk enters the battlefield, and whenever you cast a spell, that does not say creature, that says spell, with mana value 5 or greater, draw a card. You are in green, you are playing a bunch of stuff that's 5 or greater, you should be playing this card. It is just baseline, very good. I love this casting cost for the effect. This is kind of where I want to live.
This card, you want to live on this beanstalk? That's weird, Jake.
It's beautiful.
I think that this card was a mistake. I think that this card should have been 3 or 4 mana minimum, or we remove the draw a card, the ETB draw a card. It doesn't make any sense to me that this card replaces itself in your hand,
just cantrips,
and then like just exists and does things as it exists.
It
very
does
strong
insane things
for 1 green, 1 other.
Very fun and good things.
Strong, fun, and good things, man. It is wild to me that this card got printed. I want to say that uncommon was like a choice, so that because they were like, everybody's going to need 4 copies of this, so we got to make sure that this is in players' hands, because otherwise this would be Shieldred 2.0. This would just be our most expensive card of the year, all versions, all variants, the mythic up the beanstalk. But yeah, this card is bonkers. There's not, I'm not saying every commander deck that has green in it wants this card, because there are low CMC commanders. I was just talking about Anampako. That whole deck is try to refill my hand and everything is like 3 or 4 or less, you know?
Sure.
And so it's not going to work with that kind of deck, but there are so many decks where 5, 6, these are average mana costs. And so
like Muldrotha comes to mind, for example,
right?
Because it's like, not only in Muldrotha are you getting a card every time you cast your commander, but then you're also able to get it back if people remove it, right? Because you could just be like, all right, I'll recast up the beanstalk, I'll draw a card, and now we're back online with that. I hope you enjoy it.
It just doesn't.
It's
make
just a
any
really
sense
nice
to
little.
me.
It's a beautiful little engine. It's really nice.
Lots of bonkers cards this year. Yenna Redtooth Regent is another one that I have just had a blast playing with. I have just cursed green-white enchantments for like the last 3 years because I can't stand how much love it seems like this archetype gets every set. But I leaned into it and played that Elevator deck I was telling you about. And Yenna says for 2 mana and a tap, choose target enchantment you control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent you control, so you can't just copy it over and over and over again. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary, so you can copy legendary enchantments, which is nuts. And then if the token is an aura, you untap Yenna, then scry 2, but you can't do this at instant speed. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't care. Choose target enchantment you control. Okay, in an aura's deck, all that glitters, I'll make a copy of it. Boom, done. The only balance in this, any of the Umbras, any Eldrazi Conscription is an aura. I can copy Eldrazi Conscription for 2 mana and get to untap Yenna and scry 2 for some reason. This card in these archetypes is nuts, man. I feel like this just kind of slipped by for a lot of people, but I implore you, if you're playing an aura deck, get you a copy of Yenna. Shout out to our buddy Travis. Travis happened to have one of these from one of his many drafts in SLC, and right at the end of the conference, I walked up to him and I was like, I showed him a picture of it on my phone. I was like, do you happen to pull one of these? And he was like, oh yeah, and flipped through a box and threw it to me and was like, have a good flight. This one's a really fun one. I like how much love that archetype got in another year.
Next up, we have a very nice removal spell. For 1 white and 2 other, we have instant speed, Stroke of Midnight. Destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 1/1 white human creature token. Had to get a good removal spell on here. There were a lot of good removal spells this year. We got a reprint of Snuff Out, which is a fun card that came out this year.
LCI gave us Get Lost, which was really good.
Yeah, we got a lot of new stuff. We got some reprints of some old stuff, but Stroke of Midnight is a very cool card. We just wanted to throw it on the list. Not really a lot to break down here. This is just destroy target non-land permanent. A lot of coverage on that. Cards like Beast Within should come to mind, even though Beast Within can hit lands. This is just kind of on par with that kind of stuff.
It's a generous gift, except you're getting a 1/1 instead of a 3/3, right?
Yes, exactly. And the drawback is very, very, very chill.
Especially in the game of Commander. I don't care about giving you a 1/1. So here's Virtua Loyalty. We talked about the black Virtue. This is the white one. 2 white, 3 other. The adventure side is called Arden Vale Fealty. 1 white, 1 other. Instant speed. Create a 2/2 night creature token with vigilance. I like that it's instant speed. That's pretty cool. EOT, that's sucker. But 5 mana enchantment on the other side that you can play from exile after you've created a 2/2 at instant speed. It says at the beginning of your end step, so you get it immediately on the turn that you play it. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, then untap them, because why not?
Why did they have to put untap those creatures on this card?
Because they wanted this one to go bonkers, man. I play against this a lot in Historic Brawl. I've seen it in Commander as well.
This has to just be nail in the coffin type territory once it hits the battlefield and you can't deal with it, because it's like,
I would say,
it's just
if
so much value,
if it goes unanswered for 2 or 3 turns, all of their 1/1s that were on the battlefield have now become 3/3s. That's suddenly something something to deal with. Absolutely. I would tell people there was a Convoke deck that came out earlier in the year. Look at this card combined with that Convoke deck, y'all, because you can tap all your creatures and cast some stuff, and then this untaps your line, and you don't have to worry too much about effects like Ghostly Prison or Propaganda to protect you from crackbacks if you were in a deck that wants to turn things sideways. People who like to play turn things sideways decks like moi, you need to get in on this card for sure, because it's going to work very well for you.
I like it. It could be at the top of the curve, like Venerated Loxodon comes to mind, and just like get a bunch of stuff out early and then play that. Just go to town. Beseech the Mirror. This was a card that had a lot of hype, and it actually has stood up to the hype. This is one of those cards that for a rate of 4, well, let's just read it. You get 3 black, 1 other for a sorcery speed card, but it has Bargain. You may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell. Search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If this spell was bargained, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost if that spell's mana value is 4 or less. Put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't cast this way. So you can tutor something up straight up, or if its casting cost is 4 or less, or its mana value rather is 4 or less, you just cast it for free. This is like the equivalent of Tutor the Wrath of God, Tutor the Damnation. If it was bargained, use it now.
Same mana.
So it's
that's
same
why
mana.
I love it.
Yeah, because sometimes in a game of Commander, you're going to cast, let's say, Vampiric Tutor, and you have Sensei's Divining Top on the field. So it's like you Vampiric Tutor, put something on top. Now you have to tap the top, draw the card, and then you need the 4 mana to cast the board wipe. This gets around all of that. If you're using Demonic Tutor, you have to pay 2 mana, tutor up the Wrath of God, and then you got to have 4 mana to cast the Wrath of God. It gets around all of that. This is a tutor and play it now kind of thing. And those are just a couple of applications. The price of this card has stood up to the hype, and I actually think the price of this card has gone up since it came out, probably for the reason that it is getting around mana restrictions.
Yeah, I love this card. This in mono black is exactly where I want to be. Love that one a lot. Speaking of black decks, Lord Skitter, y'all. This one, it looks fairly humble, but if you know, you know. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. Yeah, speaking as the Korvold player who wants literally everything I play in that deck to be residually creating tokens and bullshit for me to sacrifice to Korvold and or sacrifice to any of my infinite sack outlets once I've got like a Blood Artist and a Zulaport Cutthroat on the battlefield, and I'm just moving through bodies to ping all of our opponents. Lord Skitter is beautiful. It just happens to also have, whenever another rat enters the battlefield under your control, exile up to 1 target card from an opponent's graveyard. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to create a token to play in your synergy, and you get to completely hose the graveyard player. Speaking as the graveyard player, hate this. Speaking as the tokens player, sacrifice player, love this. Lord Skitter's pretty cool, man.
Pro tip, use this in limited and you will win. I have drafted this in limited, and if it resolves and they can't deal with it, it just creates so many tokens, and like Joel said, you pick the graveyards apart. It's a very sweet little card. It is humble, but it is powerful. Now, we're sure a ton of you are like, hey, you didn't put my card in there that I love. Well, let us know in the comments what we missed. We know that a ton of really good stuff came out this year. We had to make cuts on our list, so we included all of our favorites and some of the best stuff that we saw come out over this year, but we'd love to hear your feedback.
Thanks to TCG Player for sponsoring this video. TCG Player is the official online store of Jake and Joel or Magic. If you want to pick up any of these cards, or you're just doing some Christmas shopping on tcgplayer.com, use our link in the pinned comment. It's going to cost you nothing extra, and it's going to directly help the channel and show TCG Player that it's worth sponsoring us. So we would really appreciate it. Thank you. I think that's right. It for our 2023, Jake. It's been a great year. We got some great cards. There's 1,000 more coming on January 1st. So let's buckle down and get ready.
That's right. We have Marvel coming up in the future for Magic the Gathering. We have a ton of other IP crossovers, I'm sure. Hopefully one day they will bring us anything from the Alien franchise. Fingers crossed. Please, dear God, bring us a Xenomorph.
Happy New Year. Bye-bye.